Hello, everyone. Welcome. Sérgio from Cambridge here. First of all, happy Teacher's Day to everyone. While we wait a few seconds until everyone connects, could you please type in the city you are connecting from, please? Hello, everyone. All right. Hello, hi. Birigui, Brasília, Rio de Janeiro, Floripa, Teresina. Wow, lots of different cities around Brazil. Someone from France? Floripa, Belo Horizonte, São Paulo. That's wonderful. That's really great. Arujá, Manaus, Londrina. Wow. Cruzeiro, Alegria. That's wonderful. That's great. Welcome, everyone. Yes. Wonderful. Well, today is October 15th, and it's Teacher's Day in Brazil. So yay! What a wonderful date is today. So we at Cambridge University Present Assessment hope you're having a wonderful Teacher's Day. We believe that teachers deserve all our appreciation and respect because it's such a beautiful, important, and very, very necessary profession, especially nowadays, as you know, teachers can change and improve the lives of their students. So it's really, really important to celebrate today, okay? So we have a brand new video we would like to show you before we officially start our Cambridge Day event. I hope you all like it. Let's watch it.
Os maiores aprendizados que me acompanham até hoje vão além da sala de aula. Quando eu olho para trás, eu lembro que todo dia
Luísa
é uma nova chance de criar, se divertir e recomeçar.
Lembre que está tudo bem errar às vezes. Faz parte do processo.
Que nossos medos nada mais são que impulsos antes da gente saltar. Porque os aprendizados mais importantes nem sempre vêm dos livros. E sim de pessoas como vocês, professores. Teacher's Day 2024, os aprendizados que nos acompanham. Uma homenagem em Cambridge aos professores brasileiros.
That's a wonderful video. I hope you were all able to listen to it clearly. We hope you enjoyed it. This video was posted this morning in our social media channels, and it's really a tribute to all teachers from all segments. Now, I would like to give you this quote to introduce our event, which is attributed to Xun Huang, who was a Chinese Confucian philosopher that lived from 312 to 230 BC. And it says, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn." Well, we all know that memories fade with time and lessons may be forgotten, but experiences shape a human being and leave a mark that can last forever. So teachers have this great privilege of guiding experiences and discoveries in the students' lives, right? So this is really important. And talking about experiences, now officially welcome to our Cambridge Teachers Day 2024. My name is Sérgio Varela. I'm Product Marketing Manager responsible for the adults, young adults, and higher education segment here at Cambridge in Brazil, in São Paulo. And I'll be your host this afternoon. What a privilege. The theme of our event is continuous professional development the key for success. And that's why we are going to have three amazing speakers this afternoon who will be talking to you about important aspects of teacher development that we are sure will help you improve your career and somehow help you in your journey to success, right? Okay, so let's see how the speakers we have for this afternoon. The first speaker is Ben Goldstein, who will be talking to you in a few minutes. And the title of his talk is Teaching from the Heart. Our second speaker is Alberto Costa with his talk, Stages of Teacher Development using the Cambridge English Teaching Framework. And last but no means least, our third speaker is César Bizetto with his talk, Professional Development Pathways, taking ownership of your career and making informed choices. Well, you'll be able to interact with the speakers during the talks, but please leave those important and burning questions to the end of each presentation using the Q&A box, okay? And there will also be a raffle of a few gifts for you at the end of our event. So if you can, please wait until the end so you have the chance to win a few goodies from Cambridge. And finally, you'll be able to download a certificate for this online event, in case you want, of course. At the end of the event, we will provide you with a link to a feedback form, which is very, very, very important for our work. So you just fill up the form, answer the questions, and at the end, you'll be able to download a PDF with your certificate, right? You just include your name and save it, and that's it, really, you have your certificate. Okay. All right, so let me introduce Ben Goldstein. Ben has over 25 years experience in ELT as a writer, teacher trainer, and conference speaker. He taught materials writing for many years on the online MA-TESOL program of the New School in New York. He has written 2 methodology handbooks for teachers. One is called Language Learning with Digital Video with Paul Driver, and Working with Images. For students, he has co-authored the course book series Eyes Open and Uncover. These are for teens, and Evolve and Evolve Digital for adults, all published by Cambridge. And a new pocket handbook for teachers called Ben Goldstein 30 Ideas on Inclusion in ELT will also be published by Cambridge in 2025. So welcome, Ben. Happy Teachers Day, and it's over to you. I can just stop sharing.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Sergio, and thank you everybody for coming today. Welcome to this talk, Teaching from the Heart. First of all, I want to wish everybody in Brazil Happy Teachers Day. And it's very nice to join you all, although only virtually. I'm going to be sharing with you a story which is very dear to my heart at the end of this talk. But before we look at that, I'm going to show you what we're going to look at in the next hour, approximately 50 minutes. We'll have 10 minutes for questions. So we'll be going to look at, first of all, at the whole concept of teacher and student well-being and the effect of the pandemic on students' and teachers' lives. Then we're going to look at the whole issue of inclusion and empathy. And then, as I said, I'll finish with a story about me and my association with Brazil. So I hope you will enjoy that. So first of all, let's look at the whole issue of teacher and student well-being. About 4.5 years ago, you probably won't want to remember this because most people don't like to remember the pandemic very much. But about 4.5 years ago, we were living through the early stages of the COVID pandemic. And Cambridge invited me, you can see here, that I'm there in the corner along with my colleagues, Sarah and Anne and Matt from Cambridge, to talk about the effects of the pandemic and what the repercussions will be when we return to the classroom. That was May 2020. So little did we know, in fact, that the pandemic, unfortunately, would last a lot longer than that. And that roundtable was very much, it was called Ask Me Anything. And we really didn't know what we were, in a sense, what to expect. This was something new, which none of us could have anticipated, and it changed our lives in more ways than one. You can still watch that. There's a QR code. In fact, throughout the presentation, you'll see various QR codes, which you're welcome to capture on your smartphone. You can still watch the video, but actually perhaps more interesting than the video itself are the comments that were left by people watching it on Facebook Live. And here are a couple of comments, one from Jessica here saying, for many of my adult learners, the classes has been a form of human contact outside the immediate family. And this socio-affective or socio-emotional element became very, very important for teachers, especially those teaching adult learners. And in the chat, if you agree or disagree, well, hopefully some of you will agree that that was the case during the pandemic, that teachers of adults particularly found that the classroom became something more than just an English class, but a kind of important happening, which certainly we couldn't have anticipated. That human contact was something which the students craved, and I can see Breno there in the chat agreeing with that. And this is something which I think is very interesting about about the pandemic and the effect it had, particularly for teachers of adults and young adults. Here's another comment from another teacher who says, as we were speaking, who meant this comment, would be good to spend 2 weeks when students finally go back to school discussing and evaluating this whole period. In other words, that something happened there during the pandemic that took us all by surprise. It wasn't just learning how to teach in Zoom and so on, and all of the difficulties, the technical difficulties, the logistic difficulties, but it was also, we started realizing that our role as teachers was somehow more important. Our role as carers of our learners, this pastoral role, was something that we realized we had to develop, whether we liked it or not, because of the circumstances. And this really is all connected with the whole idea of social and emotional learning. And I'm just going to give you a little gap fill for you to do, just to get you thinking in the chat. So what is social and emotional learning, SEL? Some of you will have heard of this. It's very much something, one of the hot topics or one of the trends in ELT at the moment. But what actually is it? Here's a very good definition, I think, from Philip Kerr's book, 30 Trends in ELT. And he says, it's the process through which we understand and manage. Any ideas in the chat? Exactly. Yeah. Not too difficult as a starter. It's the process. It's not something that obviously that we learn overnight. It's something that we go through. And I think during the pandemic, we had to do that. No, we had to understand and manage our emotions, and to a certain extent, those of our learners, as we were sharing this trauma together. It also is it's a process through which we set and achieve positive. Any ideas? Yeah, goals is good. Romulo, Andrea, thank you. And feel and show for others. Feel and show. Miriam, good. That's very fast. Some of you are very fast this afternoon. Feel and show empathy for others. And this is something we're going to be looking at. We're going to look at a lot in this session. The whole importance of empathy and storytelling. Respect is also good, Mohammed, absolutely. These aren't, this is our critical thinking activity, let's say. So there are many other possibilities here. This isn't just one correct answer. And it is also about establishing and maintaining positive relationships. Yeah, Miriam is very fast. And making responsible, the last one, choices or possibly decisions. Yeah, Enrique got that. And Romulo again. So let's say that's a good, I think, a very clear definition of what social and emotional learning is. And I think it is something that we developed, or social and emotional learning and teaching is something we developed during the pandemic. And the conclusions we had, that panel, which took place 4.5 years ago now, we didn't really know what was going to happen, but we made some conclusions. And a couple of the conclusions were this, that as teachers, really, we require greater flexibility to assume this role that I said of a carer or a nurturer. We're not just there to deliver content. We're not just there to teach the grammar and vocabulary. Yes, we have to do that. We know we have to do that, but we also have other roles. And that human touch, that personal touch was something that for some teachers definitely came through during the pandemic. And it required a greater awareness as well of individual students and their needs. So this was, again, something that we concluded in our panel. And if we look at the whole issue of well-being, this is a book I recommend you definitely take a look at. Philip Kerr's 30 Trends in ELT, published by Cambridge. And there you can see Philip Kerr sort of saying why personal well-being is important. And he says this is something that we shouldn't do, obviously, on our own, but with others. And this idea of sharing and caring with others, with colleagues, is a very, very important element, of course, that we need to think of. We don't need to think just of our own well-being, but of the well-being of others. And this is something that came across in the pandemic. And he goes on to say that these collective responses are more powerful than teachers just trying to work alone. Yes, and I agree with you, Enrique, that this collection of books, of pocket handbooks, are great. And thanks for that plug. This is just one of them, which I recommend. Very, very practical and very short. And my book on inclusion will be also in this series. I'll show you a screenshot of that later. So I highly recommend this book if you're interested in the latest trends. Another question for you now, thinking about this whole idea of well-being, teacher and student well-being, and the personal nature of that teaching during the pandemic. Moving on to the second section, what do you think? Maybe, I don't know how many of you now teach online. Perhaps you could say in the chat if you teach online at all, 100% online or hybrid, just to give me an idea, maybe 50% or so on. So Gustavo says 50, 100%, some people 100%. Okay, wow. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Anybody not teaching online now, just say nothing, only face-to-face. 20% online. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Okay, so it's an interesting mixture still. A lot of you, I guess a lot of you are teaching adults and in higher education where there's more, obviously, online teaching. And a lot of you are teaching hybrid. So here's an interesting question then for you. This is very good that so many of you are teaching online still. Bearing in mind what we learned during the pandemic about remote teaching. Now, of course, the pandemic, thankfully, is over. And remote or online teaching has become a norm. It was something which was relatively new for some of us 4 or 5 years ago. Would you say that, so if you're not teaching online now, then it's in the past? Was the experience of teaching online or teaching remotely, is it, or if you're teaching now online, then it would be the present tense of the verb to be. So was or is the experience more personal than teaching face-to-face, less personal than teaching face-to-face, or roughly the same? Just put your gut reaction in the chat. You know, what would you say? More personal than face-to-face, less personal, or roughly the same? Okay, we have, wow. a variety of answers, as I would imagine, but quite a lot of people are saying roughly the same. And I think that is positive. Let's have a look at, because intuitively, the idea of teaching through screens, intuitively, we would imagine perhaps that this is less personal. Clearly, because you don't have the students in front of you, you can't judge so many things about what's going on in class. You can't monitor. You can't necessarily know if they're listening to you or not, and so on. But it's interesting that a lot of you are saying roughly the same. And this is what Juan says. This is a teacher from Brazil who I met some years ago. And look what he says there. You can just read his quotation and see if you agree with him. I've just highlighted in red, perhaps, what is the most interesting part of that quotation. Would you agree with Juan? Yeah. So Hilda totally agree. Yeah. So what he's basically saying here, this is actually, in spite of his Spanish first name, he's actually from Brazil. In fact, I think now living in Canada. But I met him in Sao Paulo a few years ago, when and he sent me this video where he made this statement. And he's really basically saying the good pedagogy is good pedagogy, right? And whether it's face-to-face or online, and that the good teachers who were personal, who are able to be personal or to get personal in the online environment, also were able to do that in the face-to-face environment. And I think this is something which is important to remember. And I've observed a lot of online classes, and I think this is something important to remember, because we're often told, ed tech gurus and so on, obviously telling us that our pedagogy will have to change if we use this software, if we use Zoom. This is going to change essentially how we teach and how we interact with our learners. And I don't think that is the case. And I think Juan's testimony is reinforcing that. Another testimony from Lucy Crichton, who you may know, she lives in Florianopolis. I saw some of you were from down south. She has her own language school for kids, the Secret Garden English School in Floripa. And again, look what she says. This is her. I asked her again, because I thought it was interesting, because her experiences are with children and not with adults. And again, notice what she says here. Look at all those positive adjectives about teaching online. And again, it was sometimes more difficult with teens, as Ramon says there. It is more difficult with teens and with younger children, but it's allowed her. She says she's become more flexible and open-minded about technologies, and that I think this is really interesting. What she says, that I'm more confident in what I've been able to produce, and happy to see that a lot of the things we've been teaching in my school for the last 18 years are pertinent. So in other words, I think what Lucy is saying there, which I find interesting, is that she's kind of surprised that good pedagogy still works in the online environment. It's still pertinent, because probably she may have felt the pressure that she'd had to change the way she fundamentally teaches. And I think this quotation is suggesting the opposite, that in fact, a lot of the things she's been doing face-to-face are pertinent in the online environment as well. So those are some testimonies from teachers in Brazil at the time of the pandemic. And I think, as I said, in terms of this section of the talk is called Post-Pandemic Shifts. And I think one of the things that's very interesting is what we said about the effect of the pandemic on how we see ourselves as teachers. And Sérgio said this at the beginning when he quoted Confucius. He said that our role as teachers is to guide our students' experiences, guiding experiences in our students' lives, and not just teaching them the subject that you're teaching. And this is very much in keeping with what Scott Thornberry says here, that teachers play, as I said, this pastoral role. And just look at this quotation: caring for the learner's emotional well-being, and advising them on how to improve and further their learning. And I think this is very, very interesting way to think of your role in the classroom. And I think because of the pandemic and because of the increase in online teaching, we are becoming more, we need to become more the participant in the classroom ecology. We can't just be the explainer of the grammar anymore, or just the unique model for our students, but rather we are a participant in what he calls the classroom ecology. And I think this is very interesting, and we'll come back to this later in my story. We talk here about the ecological perspective, which is situating language and language learning not in the head, but in its social and cultural context. So that's the linguistic ecosystem. And I think it's very important what he says, and I'll just read that quotation because I think it's very relevant to what I'll be explaining later. But just as organisms adapt to their environments and in so doing shape their environments, so too do speakers use language both to integrate into and to influence their discourse communities. So I think this is very, very important. It sounds a bit academic, perhaps, but I think this is a very, very important concept that is, again, very much what Sérgio said at the beginning, that our role is to guide our students' experiences, to shape their environment. And as they learn and as they become confident speaking, they will also shape and adapt to and shape and influence their environment. So this is the whole idea of the linguistic ecosystem, or the ecology of the classroom. Okay, so that's all a bit academic, perhaps. Let's move on to the next section of the talk, which is focusing on inclusion and empathy, which again, very much related to social and emotional learning. But before we do, then, let's just look at these positives from the pandemic. So positive conclusions or implications from the pandemic, that some teachers forged stronger connections with their students, an increased awareness of students as people, and the need for empathy. We'll be looking at that in more detail. Greater interest in well-being and inclusion, and greater sense of community and collaboration among teachers. I wouldn't want to suggest that, everything was, perfect in the pandemic. There were a lot of negative implications too, the digital divide, apart from anything else, and that's still the case, of course, with online teaching and learning. But I think these are positives that we can definitely say resulted from the pandemic, and which we're carrying through now into our everyday lives, those of us, especially those of us teaching online and face-to-face. And here's a nice quotation as well from one of the teachers, again, from looking at, this is from a collection of papers on teacher trainers, reflecting on their experiences in the pandemic. And she refers to what Philip Kerr said, sharing is caring. And I love this quotation here, where she says, the one phrase that resonated with her for that whole period was, sharing is caring. And this is really reinforcing what we've just seen, the greater collaboration and sense of community between students, teachers, and fellow teachers and colleagues. All these gestures of sharing facilitated the learning of my students, my colleagues, and myself. So very, very profound comment, I think. So let's then look at the third section, which is focusing on inclusion and empathy. And again, these are difficult topics to define, but I'm going to try my best. Again, I think it's important to think of these things as processes often, in the same way that SEL is a process. Inclusion also is a process concerned with the identification and removal of barriers to the presence, participation, and achievement of all students. And these barriers can be caused by many different things: the marginalization of learners' identities, disparities in socioeconomic status or physical, sensory, or cognitive difference. So again, I think this is very important, because one way for us to understand inclusion is to think of the barriers you've had to face in your life. And this will help us to empathize with other people's barriers. So if you just think about, you don't need to write in the chat, you can just reflect for a moment on this, but just think about a barrier you've had to face in your learning or in living, a barrier that you've had to encounter, and whether I don't know whether you were able to overcome it or not, but thinking about these barriers is a way for us to empathize with the barriers of others. And empathy, again, the best definition of empathy as far as I can see is this: is the art of stepping imaginatively into the shoes of another person, understanding their feelings and perspectives, and using that understanding to guide your actions. And it seems to me that the two things are, oops, this is what I was fearing was going to happen. Let me just upload again. I'm sorry, my PowerPoint seems to have crashed at a very bad time. Hang on a second. I'll reopen. Sorry about this technical issue. It happens, yes, Jessica, and it's we all can empathize. No, we're on the topic of empathy, so we can all empathize with this. Thank you for your support. Let me find the slide again. If it happens again, I might ask you to hang on a sec. I need to share. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, sorry about that.
Not in presentation mode, sorry.
Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
Oh, phew.
Perfect.
Just 2 minutes of nervousness. So what is empathy? It's the art of stepping imaginatively into the shoes of another and understanding their feelings and perspectives. And it seems to me that it's impossible to create an inclusive environment without developing a sense of empathy. And as I said, that one way perhaps of doing that is to think of the barriers you've had to encounter in your learning or in living. And this way will help you to understand perhaps or appreciate the barriers of others. One interesting example of this is in the course book that I've co-authored, Evolve. I don't know if you know this course. Perhaps you could write in the chat if you do know the course and have used it or are using it. But we include these real student videos there, and you can actually see 2 students from Brazil in that particular level. Thank you. Thank you that so many of you are using the course. And one of the nice things about these contributors is that they are just real students. They have the similar level to the students who are using the book. So these would be A2 level, for example. And the students can watch these videos, these short videos that these real students have made themselves. And then they can empathize with them as sympathetic or accessible role models. And this is a very nice way to include an element of empathy within the methodology of a course book, which is not that common. And this, again, is also something positive because students don't just hear you or the audio or the video of the people in the course book, native speakers, for example, or near native speakers, but also learners who they can, as I said, are more accessible for them as role models. But how do we create inclusive? Where do we get inclusive and diverse texts from? I think one of the problems is finding. So in Evolve, we provided you with those videos. That's part of the methodology of the course. But it's not easy sometimes to find diverse text. If you want to become inclusive and want to include diverse voices in your lessons, it's not always the easiest thing to do. And in this Penguin text, which again you can download from the internet, called Lit in Color, looking at supporting inclusive reading in schools, it focused on the fact that teachers have problems sourcing appropriate inclusive material and then feeling secure in how to teach that material. So this is obviously a problem or an issue for some teachers, that they want to make their teaching more diverse, they want to include more diverse voices, but they don't quite know how to do it. I'm going to share with you now two interesting case studies of two teachers from very different parts of the world who tried to make their teaching more diverse and more inclusive and more empathic. And one of them, I don't know if you recognize this photo, this comes from 2017, but this photograph actually became quite a famous photo. If you recognize the photo, you can put that in the chat, or you can say what can you see in the photograph. You can also add that to the chat as well. What can you see in the photograph, and why do you think this photo was important? As said just at the beginning, I've had a lot of teaching experience, but I don't just teach, funnily enough, in English. I also teach in Spanish. And I taught for many years a course in visual literacy, using images in the classroom as one of my interests. And I had teachers from all over the world. And one of the teachers, one of the tasks was to find an image from the media and to share that image with the class. Again, we're all online, all in different parts of the world. And then to design an activity around the image. And now this teacher came from Egypt. I don't know if anyone recognized this image. I didn't see anybody saying anything in the chat. Or what can you see in the image? What describe the image just very briefly, if you like, in the chat. It's probably not an image that would be controversial or newsworthy in many parts of the world, perhaps not in Brazil, certainly not here in Spain. Yes, it's a concert, and yes, it's showing a crowded concert, and there's a flag of the LGBT movement. Thank you, Anna Paula. But this teacher, this image became very important actually later on. And this teacher was living in Egypt, was teaching in Instituto Cervantes in Egypt, in Cairo. And this is this is what she shared with us in the forum. And it's all in Spanish, as you can see. I'm not going to share with you now all of that, but I'm just going to share with you her dilemma. She really wanted to use this image because it was something very relevant at the time in Cairo. And she wrote this. So she says, the aim of this task is to make the students reflect and give their opinion on quite a taboo topic in Egypt. And she said, unfortunately, Egyptians never talk about the subject of homosexuality, and I think the freedom I have working in a Spanish center, such as the Instituto Cervantes, would have given me a golden opportunity to refer to this subject. So here you can see her dilemma. She wants to include this image. She designed an activity around it. She wanted it to open up this for debate. But what do you think happened? In the end, she didn't feel prepared enough to do the task with her students. In the end, she says this: I didn't dare do it because the group I had at that moment would not have been too receptive towards this subject. However, if I'd had a group with other characteristics, I would have loved to have taken the risk. And then she reached out to other people in the forum. Remember, I was working with Spanish teachers all over the world. And she says, what do you think? Do you think it's right to take the risk or keep within our comfort zone? And this is very interesting, because what she was wanting to do is reach out and get the teachers to empathize with her. This is a dilemma that faces many, many teachers all over the world. And I think it's very revealing that she focused our attention, and she got a lot of different feedback from different teachers, some of them supporting her, most of them supporting her, but some of them saying that it wouldn't have been a problem in their context, but saying that, this is, as you say, Ana Paula, it's a tough situation, a tough context. Here's another tough situation, and this is from Tanya, who is British but lives in Canada. And Tanya was, in this case, it's slightly different. In the case of the teacher in Egypt, Andrea, she wanted to use this material. But in the case of the material now, Tanya here had to use this material, this inclusive material. The material in question here, something very different. It was related to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in Canada. And I don't know if you knew about the very terrible treatment of Indigenous or First Nation students in Canada, that they were, many of these children were taken from their homes in the name of assimilation, and some of them disappeared. And it's a terrible or tragic legacy that many Canadians still have to suffer. And these photograph of these children's shoes, let's say, represent this trauma. Tanya, in her class in Canada, she had to include this material. Okay, it's a little bit like, well, anything which is shameful in the history of a country, very often the country obliges teachers to focus on it in order to sort of, as a kind of therapy. But Tanya felt very uncomfortable. She didn't know what to do. She says, I'm not Indigenous. I'm not even Canadian. How could I write materials about this subject? Did I have any right to do so? And in the end, these are the questions she asked herself. How could I work with this subject matter and produce material that was accurate, sensitive, and still pedagogically effective? So you see the problem that many teachers are facing with this inclusive content. And I love these two case studies. They're very different, but they have something in common, which is this dilemma that so many of us go through. In the end, in this article in the IATEFL, in fact, you can still download that, I think, from IATEFL Voices 283. She actually gave some advice, and she says, if you're treating anything which is traumatic or difficult, then you should know why you're doing it. Don't just do it for the sake of it. Don't just do it for box ticking. You should allow flexibility in the delivery of material, and you should build in opportunities for individual reflection and response. And a very good piece of advice, don't sugarcoat it. In other words, don't make it easy to digest, because it's not. Yeah, this is these terrible things happened, and so we have to face the facts and not make it less awful than it really was. And I think one of the sort of best bits of advice she uses for talking about issues like this is let the voices of those affected take center stage. And I think that is a very important thing to remember. So when she actually, in the end, in the class that she taught, what she did was she got a testimony from one of these children. She found a testimony, she found their voice, and she used that voice to create a lesson around the topic, rather than looking at it from an outsider's perspective. So I think that's a very, very good piece of advice. If you're looking at, you want to do inclusive content, then you should try to find the voice of one of the people who is marginalized. And this expression I think the original, this expression, this quotation is very well known, never teach about us without us, is, I think, originally from a First Nations teacher in Canada, Robert Thabert. I think that's a very, very important thing to remember when looking at inclusive content. And if you're interested, Cambridge, the whole issue of empathy and inclusion is all related with social and emotional learning and emotional development. If you take a shot of that QR code, or I think the Cambridge people will put a link in the chat. Emotional development is one of the Cambridge life competencies, one that's often forgotten about, actually, because it's one of the most fundamental ones. There are lots of lovely activities that you can download from that link that Anna has just uploaded. This is a very nice one called Finding the Silver Lining. So even if you're talking about something which is really negative or really challenging, it's important for students to try to think of the positive. So, for example, in the case of the teacher in Egypt, yeah, she wasn't able to do that, but she was able to share her experience and get other people to empathize with her in our online classroom. And that was one positive consequence of that dilemma that she went through. Now, so finding the silver lining is a very nice task. And other ones, emotional development, the competency is divided into 3 sections, which is identifying and understanding emotions, managing emotions, and empathy and relationship skills. And here's another one of the cards that you can download as well, again, for encouraging students to be empathic, recognizing and describing emotions, and asking learners to share their ideas, see, think, and feel, which is again, a very nice activity. And this is the book I mentioned just to finish this section. Hopefully it will be published next year by Cambridge, 30 Ideas on Inclusion in ELT. And we're looking at language, methodology, materials, the environment, assessment, and community in that book. So I'm looking forward to talking about that in more detail later next year. So just to finish this section, before we focus on my story, my story from the heart, I think it's important that inclusive practice for it to be effective, it must promote personal well-being for us all, not just for your own personal well-being, but for everybody. And we should try to introduce content which encourages an empathic response. So we should try to tell stories from your life. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to share a story with you to finish today's talk, which I hope you can empathize with, and which I hope carries a message that you will find valuable on Teachers' Day. So as I tell you the story, I want you to think of a similar story that perhaps you could tell about your life, about learning a language, which is what this story is about. And because students will always be interested in you and your life and your stories. So let's look at this story, and one which is very meaningful to me, a story from the heart. So, uma historia do coração. I'm going to try and speak. Intentaré falar um pouquinho de português. Let me explain. Going back 20 years ago to 2004, this is the story. I was in this place in April 2004 in Liverpool. And I don't know if you know the IATEFL conference. IATEFL conference is, well, a big international conference in the UK. And it was my first time speaking at the conference. I was a very young speaker. I just had my first book published, but I wasn't very experienced. And at that time, in April 2004, I was asked by the publisher publishing that book to come to Brazil. And this was something that was very surprising. And I said, yeah, I'd love to go to Brazil. I've never been to Brazil. And they said, how long would you like me to go for? And the guy said 3 months. And it's, Brazil is a big country. So I was kind of quite surprised. I didn't really speak any Portuguese. Obviously, I live here in Spain, in Barcelona. I could speak Spanish. But I wanted to try to study. I knew that, and I was due to go to Brazil in September, October. So I knew I had a few months. So I decided that I would learn Brazilian Portuguese. And I decided to go. This is, can you believe it? This is the Consulado Geral do Brasil, Centro Cultural do Brasil in Barcelona, in that beautiful building. And if you've ever been to Barcelona, that building, the Casa Matller, is right next to the Casa Batlló, which is a very famous building here in Barcelona. And I did the course for 3 months, kind of crash course in Portuguese. I only was once or twice a week, but knowing Spanish, I did pick up quite a lot of Portuguese. And so when I arrived in Rio de Janeiro in September, that is the song, the very famous song, the Samba de Avião of Tom Jobim. There aren't many countries that have wonderful songs about arriving in an airport and arriving in a city, but of course this is one of them. And actually in Galeão, you can see this wonderful plaque to that song, Samba de Avião. And I arrived, and basically I'd arranged with my partner to go on holiday for a few weeks before the tour of Brazil, before I had to work in Brazil for the first time. And so when I arrived in Rio for the first time in Brazil, they asked me, "Are you você está de férias ou de trabalho?" And I said, "Un poco de los dois," which wasn't the best thing to say, because I didn't have a work permit. So I didn't start very well. But the idea was I was coming to be on holiday to start with, and then I was going to work in Brazil. And I managed finally to get through the passport check, and I arrived in Rio. And this is a photograph I took in September 2004, nearly exactly 20 years ago, from the Ouro Verde Hotel in Copacabana. And well, it's the iconic view of Brazil, right? Okay, so this is something which I had seen in postcards. I had, heard about Rio in so many songs of Bossa Nova and MPB and so on. And then I learned about the Encontro das Águas on the beautiful pavement and so on. I spent the next 2 weeks traveling around Brazil with my partner. And then I had to start work. And I arrived, actually, I didn't start in Rio. I actually started in Belo Horizonte. And this is the view of my hotel room in Belo Horizonte. And suddenly I had to, it was a completely new context for me. I suddenly had to learn and speak Portuguese. And I was helped by the woman who was in charge of me in Minas, who was a woman called Cíntia, a lovely, lovely woman. And that is my notebook of studying Portuguese. And you can see I could speak a little bit of Portuguese, but I didn't know how to say, faz uma notinha para a gente, or cafezinho, me vê cafezinho, and so on. And these are the little notes. I have a whole notebook of all the things I learned, and Cíntia provided the scaffolding for me. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I made the effort. I could have just spoken Portuñol, but I decided I would try to make the effort to learn Brazilian Portuguese. And Cíntia and everybody else helped me along the way. And Cíntia, I remember, had an absolutely lovely Mineira accent, and which I thought was lovely. She provided the scaffolding, and she helped me with my phrasebook of everyday Brazilian Portuguese. But then the weekend came, and I had to be on my own. And I took I don't know if you know this train, a Maria Fumaça, the train from Tiradentes to São del Rei. And suddenly I was on my own. And I had to speak. And in Rio, maybe people would speak Spanish or Portuñol, but in that part of Minas, I really had to defend I had to speak in Portuguese. And this is when I really realized that it was really worth making the effort. And I realized there as well how I was adapting to my new environment. And it suddenly occurred to me, I don't know if you can empathize with it, you can empathize with me, about when you maybe arrived in an English-speaking country, or when you had to speak English. Suddenly you feel very exposed. But this was a great experience for me. I suddenly realized that I could do it. And I think in reality, this is what we are preparing our learners for. This kind of circumstance, when you're suddenly in the middle of an environment that you don't know, and you suddenly have to speak and learn and adapt to your environment. And from there on, I kind of I traveled all the way through Brazil. This is me in the queue in Sao Paulo, queuing for a pastel de bacalhau in the Mercado Central. And for all these different contexts, I had to speak Brazilian, obviously colloquial Portuguese. Do you still have to queue for that pastel de bacalhau now?
Oh,
I remember
yes.
a very long queue. This is me in Olinda, where I met, believe it or not, Alberto Costa, who was going to be doing the talk right after my talk now. And of course, I was working as well. It looks like I'm on holiday the whole time, but I was working. I met a lot of teachers. I went to a conference in Brasilia. This was my first big conference, ABSE, in November 2004, almost exactly 20 years to the day, just almost 20 years ago. And it was a wonderful experience because I'd met a lot of teachers in Cultura Inglesa. Alberto himself worked in Cultura Inglesa 20 years ago. And I met all of them later on in the conference in ABSE. And I realized actually that one of the great things about Brazil is that if you do make the effort, they will appreciate it. And I realized that the Brazilian audience is kind of nothing better. They're kind of on your side, and they appreciate the effort and are extremely grateful. And I suppose on Teachers' Day, I wanted to share that with you because it's when I really felt it in that ABSE conference. I was still very young and very inexperienced, but I felt the support of the teachers there and that they were on my side. And after that wonderful experience, I got home and all the music that I came back with armfuls of C compact discs, and I made a Christmas 2004 compilation for my partner, including some of my favorite songs from Brazil. And now I could understand the words. That was the great thing. And includes that wonderful Jobim classic, the Samba da Avião. And I'm leaving you with my final photo from that trip. This is me on the Rio Negro in the Encontro das Águas in Manaus in exactly 20 years ago. So thank you very much for listening. Muito obrigado, de verdade. And espero que a história continue, I don't know, for another 20 years. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope you enjoyed the story and enjoyed the presentation. And I think we have some questions.
Yes, Ben, thank you very much.
Let's been a bit over time, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You should have received some questions in your WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
now. So I've got the one from Mohammed. I've got a question, actually from Egypt. That's interesting. Do you think that online learning and teaching is called escaping for freedom? Is called escaping for freedom and out of teachers' control? I think no. I don't think that it's out of teachers' control at all. I think that sometimes it can seem like that, and especially with teens, we saw some comments in the chat about teens being very difficult, it's very difficult to monitor, and I do feel that we've all had that sensation that it's sometimes out of control. But I don't think that is something. I think you learn to deal with that. You learn to monitor. You learn to establish certain rules in the online classroom, and it should certainly not feel that it's something out of control at all. I know that sensation, though. I can empathize. Another question from an anonymous teacher in Rio. Some of my students are constantly afraid of speaking English in class. How can we deal with it? Well, again, I think this is a question of the classroom environment. What you need to do is establish an environment in which students don't feel judged, where they feel safe to speak, where they don't feel that they are being judged by their peers. So this is not something you can do overnight, but it is one possible way of doing it is to establish a kind of contract with your students. Perhaps say to them, we're not going to, you're not going to interrupt your peers or something like that. You're going to respect the opinions of others, even if you don't agree with them. Basically, giving students time as well. Often with speaking tasks, we don't give students enough time to speak. And sometimes students are afraid of making mistakes and afraid of doing these tasks because they haven't had enough preparation time. So that's a big question to answer, but I think the most important thing if students are afraid of speaking is you need to change something in the environment of the class. It's not just the tasks, but it's the atmosphere, it's the environment, and students have to feel that safe about speaking. And the last one is from Gustavo, and he says, thank you for the presentation. Have you noticed any noteworthy changes in the content or activities of textbooks provided by major publishers that have been reworked, added to better suit online teaching? Wow, that's an interesting question. Well, I think that stumped me. I think the idea is really with the self-study element. So it doesn't have an effect on the student book material to a certain extent, but it does have an effect, of course, on the workbook material, because if you are preparing students for a hybrid environment, then the material has to work digitally and on paper. So that means that you can't have much ambiguity. You have to have a lot of black and white. In fact, it makes the activities a little bit less creative. So I can see it in that point of view. But in terms of the activities in the paper format books, I would say they haven't been affected by the online teaching. But I think that certainly the element of I focus on competencies and creative thinking and critical thinking, social emotional learning, diversity, inclusion, all of these things are becoming more prominent now in all of our materials. I don't think that's necessarily to do with online. That's just the fashion. But it is true that if you are working in a hybrid environment, the one good thing, if you do have a face-to-face element, whether that's on Zoom or Teams, or whether it's genuinely face-to-face, the whole concept of that is that the flipped classroom, no? So that you do all of the, let's say, mechanical stuff online, and that frees up the face-to-face classroom to be that kind of creative, critical space, no? So I would say that, if anything, that is the direction all textbooks are going in. But I think only online teaching is not necessarily responsible for that. Yeah. Hope that made sense.
It does. Thanks a lot, Ben. Well,
okay.
Yeah, well, in the name of Cambridge University Press and Assessment, I would like to thank you very, very much for your talk. Very interesting talk about empathy and inclusion, Ben. I think it's really valuable insights for our career as teachers and educators. And that was a lovely story about Brazil.
Yeah, well, I wanted to share that with you because, well, I mean, Brazil is, for me, a very special place, and there's a history there, there's a story there, and I've learned from you as well, and everybody who I've met along the way has been part of that story. And it is about sharing those experiences, I think. And I would encourage you to, as I said, all of you, to share your stories with your students. There's nothing that they'll enjoy more than that. And it's not, don't think of it as egocentric or anything like that. That's what empathy is, encouraging empathy is all about. It's about sharing stories. And then that will encourage them to share their stories. And there's nothing better for an empathic classroom than that. So that's kind of really why I wanted to share that with you all today. Apart from 20 years.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Stay, and
thank you.
Good luck, Alberto.
Thank you, Ben.
See you next time.
Hope we carry on being friends for another 20 years.
Yes, absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you, Ben. See you next
Bye.
time then.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Well, before we move on to the next talk with Alberto Costa, I just would like to talk to you very briefly about a program we have. So just bear with me just 1 second. Okay, can you all see my screen? I hope so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to talk to you very quickly about a special program we have. As I said, it has been developed for Brazilian private teachers, and it's called Cambridge Biosite Program. This is a local initiative, okay? The Cambridge Biosite Program, it's a membership program designed specifically for English private teachers who teach English to adults and young adults in Brazil. And for the time being, it's completely free of charge. So you don't need to pay anything to be a member of the program. There are no fees, no taxes, no hidden payments. And, you know, for the time being, it's completely free. And how do private teachers benefit from it? Well, we always say that we offer structured support to the members or for the members of the program in terms of teacher development, and we do that with exclusive webinars, not only for members. I'm sorry, we do it only for members of the program because these are exclusive webinars. And we also offer a newsletter with expert tips, including technology tips, some pedagogical tips. We also offer a playlist with interesting and general teacher webinars that are useful for your career. We also have a selection of blog articles related to teaching adults and young adults, and also some interesting information and updates about the solutions that Cambridge can offer you, both print and digital solutions for your students. And we often have big promo discounts for members to buy some methodology books, and we can even offer you the opportunity to gain some extra money at the end of the month. Yes, you can open a completely free virtual bookshop at Gisal Digital. Gisal is one of our distributors in Brazil, so you can sell Cambridge material directly to your students, and you can gain a percentage of the total sales. So yes, you can have an extra income by selling Cambridge material directly to your students. Okay. So now let me just say something about this virtual bookshop at Gisal Digital. Anyone can have a virtual bookshop with Gisal Digital, okay? So let's imagine someone teaching gastronomy, for example. This person can sell gastronomy books for their students via Gisal Digital, no problem. The thing is that opening a regular Gisal Digital bookshop has a cost. There's a minimal amount of books that the teachers need to buy, so it's not completely free of charge. Now, because of a special partnership we, Cambridge, have with Gisal, the members of the Cambridge Biosite program are exempt from paying any fees or purchasing any minimal book package. So for the time being, only members of the Cambridge Biosite program can have their completely free of charge virtual bookshop with Gisal Digital. Okay, so now you can see that the program has this specific website where members can access all the exclusive webinars, the newsletters, all the experts' tips and goodies that we prepare for them every month. But this website is exclusive for members of the Cambridge Biosite program, and it has a specific password to do it, to access it. So if you are a private teacher and want to join the program, the only thing you need to do is to scan the QR code on the right, fill up a very brief form, and then you'll be able to take advantage of all the benefits we have prepared for members. Okay? Again, this is a completely free membership program. And guess what? Cambridge Bioside is celebrating its first anniversary this October. And we are preparing some really wonderful gifts for our members. So yes, the anniversary is ours, but the gifts are for our members. And the first gift, let's say that, is an exclusive webinar for members only with one of the most iconic ELT figures of all times. Scott Thornberry, yes, one of the most renowned speakers, teachers, authors, and educators of our time, will talk exclusively for the Cambridge Bioside members. So if you want to have this great opportunity to be in a free webinar with Scott Thornberry, please become a member as soon as you can. And we have another gift we are giving the Cambridge Bioside members, which is a incredible, wonderful, and very special campaign that will take one member of the program to the IATEFL 2025 convention, which will take place in 2025 in the city of Edinburgh in Scotland, in the United Kingdom. This is going to happen in the second week of April 2025. So yes, you've heard correctly. I'm not joking, not this time. The Cambridge Bioside program will take one of its members to the UK, to the IATEFL 2025 International Convention. And only members of the Cambridge Bioside program will get information about it and information on how to participate, as there are some criteria to be met. Okay, so don't waste any time and learn more about it once you become a member of the Cambridge Bioside program. By the way, we will have an exclusive webinar for members only, in which we will explain how this whole campaign will work. Okay, so become a member today and know more about it. Now, okay, wonderful. Well, let's talk about our next guest, our second guest of this afternoon, Alberto Costa. Well, Alberto will talk about stages of teacher development using the Cambridge English Teaching Framework. Alberto Costa works as an assessment services manager for Cambridge University Press and Assessment in Brazil. His background and expertise encompasses a diverse range of roles, including English teacher, teacher trainer, academic consultant, and tutor for the Cambridge CELTA and Delta teaching certifications. He holds the Cambridge RSA diploma for overseas teachers of English, the OTE, and a specialization in teacher training from the College of St. Mark and St. John in Plymouth, United Kingdom. How chic he is. Alberto, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Happy Teachers' Day to you, and it's over to you. Let's just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Sérgio, and hello, everyone. Well, I was moved by the story that Ben told about his visit to Brazil and when we met in 2004. I said in the chat that I was young and I still had a lot of hair. I remember those days, Ben, if you are still listening to us. And because of that moment we had when we met in ELT events, we had the chance to, continue our friendship. And then we met again in many other places and in many other conferences, which include Brazil, the UK, Scotland, and last but not least, Ben had the pleasure to welcome me and my partner in Barcelona a few years ago, and he was the loveliest host Barcelona can have. and he took us to the most delicious paella at the top of Montjuic Park in Barcelona. So thank you, Ben, for all those years. And you have always been one of those professionals I've always looked up to. I see your presentations and you move me every time you tell a story. So thank you so much for your kind words. Well, I would like to start by celebrating this day. Congratulations to all of you. Happy Teachers' Day. I think it's a very important date to celebrate and to have such an event. And I think the event kicked off with a great talk by Ben with lots of memories, and it was really moving in so many ways. So thank you everyone for joining, for participating, and mostly for keeping the chat going so quickly with so many lovely comments about Ben's sessions and giving your contributions. So for this talk today, we are going to talk about professional development, and we're going also to talk about the stages of development, starting with the question, how does a career in English teaching develop? We are going to talk about in some of the innovations and challenges that happen to our career as language teachers and consider aspects of teacher education. One of the things we're going to do as well is to look at the experts. That is, what is it that experts teachers do, know, they do and they know that we need to learn from and develop, and then create the stages for this development. And this will be connected with this framework, the Cambridge English Teaching Framework, which gives you some pathways for professional development. And of course, we're going to talk about what effective teachers know. We're going to look into the framework components. We are going to do some activities as well. So we'll need your participation for this moment. Of course, we're going to talk about the competency statements because the framework resembles the structure of the Common European Framework. And we're going to see some of those statements there. And we're going to end with the question, where do we go from here and how we can best make use of the Cambridge English Teaching Framework as a tool for professional development. So when we talk about professional development, one question that we need to ask is, how can we gauge our professional development? Can you share some ideas in the chat? What is it that gives us the milestones for professional development? And how can we gauge that we are developing? What instruments or what activities, what ideas, etc. How can we gauge this professional development? I'm happy to see your ideas in the chat. Because, I mean, it's difficult to see development in concrete terms. But how can we see that we are developing professionally? Well, Ellen says that teachers never stop learning. This is true because we work with people, so we are learning every day. But how can we gauge this learning and this development, Ellen? I think Josilda says fluency is one of the parameters. Yeah, actually, language ability is really, really important for teachers. After all, we teach a language. So that could be one way of checking development and also making sure that we are achieving specific levels of proficiency. Any other ways for checking professional development? If students are showing better results, okay, good contribution, Sandra. Doing teaching courses, okay. Well, to see students improving, exactly. So Alan says becoming updated, so keeping abreast with things, doing courses such as CELTA and Delta, yeah, taking exams. Well, there are many ways of, engaging in professional development. So we are going to see some of those ways. Because if we look at development, we can think about the qualifications that we have obtained. That would be one maybe parameter. But also we could consider the number of hours or years of formal teaching experience. This is also one way of maybe gauging development. If you say you have been teaching for 15 years, for example. However, some authors in ELT have asked ourselves as teachers this question: have we been teaching for 15 years or have we been teaching 1 year 15 times? So only the number of hours or only the qualifications may not be, ways of gauging professional development. So we might need other means of gauging this development. So how does a career in English teaching develop? This is one way of looking at it. You could take a corresponding degree like pedagogia, letras, etc., right? Or maybe you have a degree in another area. I have met many colleagues who have a degree in law, for example, or who have a degree in medicine, but they have decided to become language teachers instead. So you could have a corresponding degree or not. Then you do an initial training course, which could be provided by the institution, or maybe you do a course like CELTA, for example. And by the way, speaking of courses, our colleague César Bizetto will give you lots of possibilities in the next session. So stay tuned for César's session as well. And then, as you develop, you could do other training opportunities. For example, you could prepare to take the TKT tests. And the TKT, they talk about teaching and knowledge about teaching as well. So it could be one way. TKT is used here as an example, but of course, there are so many possibilities like extension courses and post-graduation courses as well. And then you might want to do specialized training, like taking a Delta course or a course that will involve, a lot more focus on studying, reading, writing a dissertation, for example. So this is one way of seeing career development in language teaching. But this is all too good. But is life really like this? Is life really linear like this? Well, maybe not. Perhaps when we talk about language teaching, our career is full of curves and arrows that go up and down and to the right and to the left, and then pointing upwards and downwards, because we face lots of challenges. We get many opportunities. So our career may not be as linear as that. And these are some of the innovations and challenges that have come to language teaching and education in general. So things like teaching in bilingual programs, the impact of artificial intelligence in our lives, in our teaching, with our learners using all those tools. And sometimes they use tools we are not familiar with yet. So we have had the impact of the BNCC in education, in Brazilian education. Well, the fact that, like Ben discussed earlier today, remote versus hybrid learning and all those post-pandemic activities and routines. Of course, language assessment, which has innovations, and language assessment as well becomes more and more widely discussed, which I think is a benefit. Yeah, and what other things do you consider to be innovations and challenges in teaching and education in general? Can you share your thoughts in the chat? What are the other innovations and challenges that we are facing as teachers? There are quite a few here, I understand. Yes, Camila, AI, I think, and I think AI is something that we cannot say about it now only. AI will remain impacting and changing so much and so quickly. Yes, the bilingual programs, yeah, so learning how to work remotely, students' behavior and attitudes, and lots of trends, yes, all the different trends that come to students' lives, and then this ends up impacting education as well. And emotional intelligence, Nancy is bringing this very important topic here too. So you see, challenges and innovations happen all the time. And here is the poor teacher looking at all those things happening around them, but asking the question and feeling puzzled. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I develop? Which direction do I take? Should I move to bilingual programs? Should I, go to remote or hybrid learning? How about the way I assess my learners? Am I fine with it? Are learners fine with it? Do I need to learn more about assessment? And how can I bring AI in a way that is pedagogical, most of all, not just because AI has become a big trend? So lots of questions that come to our minds. So in order to try, if possible, because that would be too ambitious of me, in order to try and organize this, let's look at this umbrella term, which we call teacher education. So teacher education encompasses many things. One of them is teacher training. When we talk about teacher training, we are talking about training that includes a tutor, for example, and it also encompasses teacher development. Are they the same or are they different? Well, teacher training involves any learning process that is led by a trainer. As I said before, as a spoiler, César will be talking about some teacher training opportunities you cannot miss, right? Teacher development, on the other hand, is a learning process led by the teacher. So it's us, it's you, in your initiative to try new things, to do the learning, to experiment, to read a book, to attend a conference, to be here with us today. And then by, focusing on this learning process that is led by you, you draw conclusions, and then you might want to share those conclusions with your learners or with your colleagues. And then learning happens as a result of teacher development initiatives and activities. So this is just to try and organize. The idea really is for you to consider ways of doing teacher training, because as Ellen said in the chat, teachers are always learning. So learning from other colleagues is important, but also teacher development initiatives where we try and do things to improve our teaching, to improve the way we relate with students. Maybe we want to improve we want to add variety to the way we assess learners, for example. So that will go into any area you feel you want to develop, you feel you need more support with, yeah? So let's look at the expert teachers, and I think this image is quite powerful when we talk about a career in language teaching, right? If we started teaching now, or if you have been teaching for a few years, what is it that you feel you still need to learn? And what is it that expert teachers do that can give us, direction, can give us motivation, and can give us good models? So I think this will be an interesting exercise to do. So we're going to compare now expert teachers and novice teachers, yeah? As you look at what they do before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lesson, I want you to imagine on a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 means you are a novice and 5 means you are an expert. Where do you stand? Are you a number 1 novice? Are you a number 3? You have learned quite a few of the things, but you are still not an expert. Are you a number 4? So you are getting to a level of expertise that maybe you have, imagined and you have, looked up to. So, where do you stand? So when we look at expert teachers and novice teachers, experts do things before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lessons that are a model. They are good models for teachers who are starting their career. However, to be able to do what expert teachers do, we need to make sure we follow a path. We don't jump from novice to expert immediately. It takes time, it takes learning, it takes reading, it takes experimenting in the classroom, and it takes becoming a good listener, to listen to feedback from your learners, feedback from your colleague teachers, feedback from your trainers, for example. So let's look at what they do. Thinking of things that expert teachers do before the lesson. Before the lesson, the experts do many things that can be seen as models. They can anticipate problems. They can make decisions about things to add or to adapt. They can plan more efficiently, and they can incorporate learning from previous lessons. They can demonstrate integrated knowledge, so knowledge about the world, knowledge about the language, knowledge about the learners, and then they can link all those things, to teach an effective lesson. And then they start lesson planning with knowledge of the students and the students' needs. I think this is one of the things that are really important when we want to become an expert teacher. The lesson that we are going to teach is not what it says in the book, but it starts from learners' needs. It starts from knowing the students and their needs, and then you depart from this moment. Of course, you have the book, you have the syllabus, but this will not be the main guide to you, but what your learners needs and what the group needs as individuals, right? Well, in contrast, novice teachers, they do things differently. We are going to look at what they do in a moment, right? So during the lessons, we have the experts, for example, doing many things. They recognize patterns in classroom events. They are selective about learners' needs. They have improvisational skills. I think this is an interesting point about expert teachers, because if things don't work exactly as planned, they can improvise, but they don't do that just because they want to improvise. They do this to address emergent needs of the learners, right? And then they can also justify their practices in a principled manner. That is, if they adopted this approach, they can justify that this approach was more appropriate for that learner because of that learner context, because of that learner's feelings, etc., right? Whereas when we look at novices, they are more concerned about the classroom events in the first place. I remember myself as a novice teacher, I prepared the lesson plan that my trainer taught me how to do, but my thinking was in my next step in the plan. It was like I was teaching, but I couldn't see my students because in my mind, I only had the lesson plan to consider. Of course, as time developed, as I did the courses, as I observed other colleagues, I started looking at the students more and more. But I was always overwhelmed about, oh, my next step, oh, my next step. And what if I don't have enough activities for this amount of time in my lesson? So this is the thinking of a novice teacher, whereas an expert teacher, they understand the needs and then they can react to the moment, yeah? If you're a novice teacher, you might have difficulty addressing questions as well, and you might not be able to justify practices because you are using a number of activities, and it's in a way natural because you are learning, you are experimenting, and you still need, experience with what you are doing and how effective those practices are. Well, after the lesson, experts focus on what students have learned, yes, and what they can do to enhance learning, whereas a novice teacher will reflect on their own performance. I remember my time starting to teach. I won't say when, that was a long time ago. But I was always thinking of, okay, did I do this activity well? I never asked, did my students learn? And I never asked myself, what can I do to enhance learning? Whether or not I am doing one activity again, or if I am doing another page of the book, or if I am bringing something extra for learners. So I think looking at this contrast is good to understand, the expert practices, and look at the expert practices and take them as a goal for development. So we see that expert teachers, they can do many things, but one way of getting to this point, to become an expert, it's important to look at the different stages of learning. So Cambridge has this framework, which was designed for language teachers, right? The Cambridge English Teaching Framework is organized in such a way that you can see the stages of development. If you look at the framework here, you see that the columns start with the foundation level. That is when you have this basic understanding of language concepts, for example. Then you move to the developing stage. That is, you have some more knowledge, you have reasonable understanding of many things that happen in the classroom. Then you move to another stage when you become a proficient teacher. That is, your understanding of principles, for example, principles of teaching, learning, and assessment, your knowledge of terms about language and terms to describe language is also good. You become a proficient teacher. The next stage is to become an expert teacher, where what you have in terms of knowledge of teaching principles, the way you deal with language, your language awareness, they are not only good, they are sophisticated. And to come to a level where all of those competencies are at sophisticated level, it takes time. It takes, experimenting, reading, learning from others, taking a range of courses. But the framework will give you some direction as well. You will see that apart, together with the different levels, you also have the stages. You can see the stages in the rows, but we are going to explore the stages in more detail in a moment, right? So when we look at the experts down the end of the framework, we understand more or less what we need to do in order to get to that goal. So the expert will be the goal. And another thing as well about the framework is that when we look at the different areas, it doesn't mean that we develop in every area at the same rate. Maybe we develop more in terms of language ability and then language awareness. And then later, we might want to develop our knowledge about assessing learners, or our knowledge about professional development and professional values as well. So I remember that my learning about assessment happened years later, because as I started teaching, my assessment procedures were basically what the school told me to do. I didn't have this critical thinking about those assessment procedures. And then later, as you study about assessment, you become more critical. So development will happen in a jagged profile. That is, different teachers will learn or will develop different areas more quickly or less quickly. And that's natural, right? Because that will depend on your interests, on the kind of audience that you teach as well. So effective teachers or expert teachers, they also know things. What is it that they know? They know about things. They know how to do things. and they know to use, they know to do things. So they use appropriate aspects of other kinds of knowledge when they are teaching. So they can bring knowledge of different areas together in a way that will sound effective and smooth for learners. So when we talk about moving from a novice to expert, teachers or expert teachers, they know about this. Knowing about means knowing the terms we use to talk about teaching practice, and also to understand the ideas those terms refer to. So for example, these are just simple examples: elicitation of the target language, error correction, and many other terms related to teaching practice, right? Knowing how relates to trying out new skills in the training room with your trainees or in the classroom with your learners. But it's not only trying out new skills or new activities, but it's about evaluating the results. So for example, you learn to correct students' errors, you practice this with your learners, and then you evaluate the results of this. So did you actually manage to give the learners a clearer understanding of those concepts, for example, or not? You try to do the eliciting. For novice teachers, this is, it is apparently simple, but it's not, to have the skills to elicit information and make this natural in the classroom. It takes practice, right? And knowing too often means that the onus is on you. This is related to teacher development in particular. You, the teacher, you apply what you have learned in the training room when you go to your classroom. It's not only the training room, but you attend a session like today, and then you go and you experiment with ideas in your classroom. And or maybe you attend a conference, you get lots of ideas and you bring those ideas to your students as well. But the most important thing here is, what kind of reflection do you do during or after the lessons you teach once you have brought those ideas to learners? So it is this reflection that will help you, go from one level to the other, so that your knowledge goes from basic to good until you get to sophisticated. But it's this reflection about the learning process that is really important. And also, when we think about reflection, the question to ask is, what was effective or what was not effective in terms of student learning? It's not because when you gave instructions, you used the wrong word, but it's about how well the students learned, how well the students practiced what you were teaching, etc. So I think this is maybe the point when you start moving from one stage to another in your development, right? So in terms of how teachers move from novice to expert, teachers know about things, teachers know how to do things, and teachers know to do it and to apply things, but also they can reflect and evaluate on those things. Those knowing boxes here, they don't have to follow this sequence. You see that they could happen in different sequences because we are experimenting and reflecting and trying again, etc. Right? But this is just to give you the stages and maybe the path. So going back to the framework has the stages of development from foundation to expert, but also it has the specific categories of things that are expected from teachers. For example, when we look at area number 1, it's about learning and the learner. Area number 2, it's about teaching, learning, and assessment. This is huge because it's 3 big things in one area: teaching, learning, and assessment. Area number 3 is about language ability. Area number 4 is about language awareness and language knowledge. And area number 5, it's about professional development and values. Now let's do a little bit of disclosure using the chat here. Which of those areas do you think you would be, proficient or expert? Just put one of the numbers here from 1 to 5 in the chat. What do you consider to be proficient for you or expert for you in this area? As I said, people learn things more quickly or less quickly, so we develop differently. So a lot of you are saying that you are proficient or expert in the area of teaching, learning, and assessment. But this is such a big area, right? But thank you for sharing your thoughts and sharing your expertise as well in the chat. Wow, number two, we have a few 3s, 5, okay, 2 and 4. Excellent, and thank you for your participation. But this framework has what we call components as well. Each of those areas will have a number of components, and what we are going to do now is a matching activity. So we're going to look at the areas here from 1 to 5. And then in the other column, I have some components from each of those areas. Of course, it's one component for each area, but those areas will have many other components, and I'll teach you where to go to find the framework components, right? But before I tell you anything else about those components, can you do the matching here? Which component belongs to which area? So you could use the chat to say number 1, letter B, for example. Number 2, letter whatever. So can you share your ideas here? Which component belongs to which area? Well, just to give you maybe a clue, you can access the framework component PDF by scanning the QR code, but no cheating, right? Try by thinking. Look at the areas and components and do the matching. Oh, Eliezer has gone all the way to number 5. That's great. Let's see, number 5, and okay, 4. I didn't see 4. I saw 1, 2, 5. Any matching for number 4, language knowledge and awareness? Okay, Romulo has attempted with letter B. Okay. Marcia has shared the whole lot. Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, so are you right about your matching ideas? Let's see. Number 1, learning and the learner, letter D. So learning and the learner, one of the components is learning theories. For example, constructivism, humanism, etc., etc. This is only one of a few other components for learning and the learner, right? Number 2, okay, letter A, teaching, learning, and assessment. So in the area of assessment, this has a lot of components, by the way. This is about using assessment to inform learning. So it's not assessment to test students, but assessment to inform learning by making good use or effective use of test results, homework, classroom performance, feedback, consolidation, recycling. So assessment is vast. So it includes many things. Number 3, recognizing learner errors. Okay, this is interesting because this is the area of language ability where we are able to recognize learner errors. But in this area, we are not concerned yet with responding to learners' errors. This is in another category, right? So number 4, language knowledge and language awareness. So all this terminology, there are many components here. One of them is terminology for describing language. So all those things related to form, meaning, phonology, about the language, all those things that César, as a teacher trainer, deals with on an everyday basis, and he'll be sharing some opportunities for you here. And then number 5, professional development and values. It has to do with your understanding of professional development as a teacher and how you can plan your own development. So it's not about only the professional side, but also your values as a professional, yeah? So this is just a tiny taster of the components for each of the categories that we can see here in the Cambridge English Teaching Framework. So thanks for your participation over here. The framework as well, as I mentioned, has this structure which resembles the CEFR. That is, it has descriptors of performance for teachers. So just to give you an example, if we look at the area learning and the learner, we have the different components: learning theories, foreign language acquisition and second language acquisition, language teaching methodology, understanding learners. For each of those components, you have descriptors which relate to each of the stages in professional development. So you can use, for example, those tables as self-assessment, and by doing so, you are developing the area of professional development and values, that is trying to understand your own development and planning your own development initiatives. In other words, your teacher education, yeah? So this, again, is just a sample, but you can access all those resources from the Cambridge website. And also, the framework brings categories, like we saw from 1 to 5, the stages from foundation to expert, but also a number of resources. So each of those areas or categories will have, sets of resources which will bring links of videos for you to watch, sources that you can use to read for development, and a number of other ideas. All you need to do is to explore the website, click on those black rectangles for more information and extra resources for each of those areas. And this is related to each of the stages as well. So you have a lot to explore using the framework to give you some kind of direction in your development. Well, I think one of the things that we can consider when we talk about the Cambridge English Teaching Framework is, where do I go and how do I go about this? You can use the framework, for example, to identify where you are in your development. Yeah. Then you use the framework as well to plan where you would like to be. Remember that throughout the session, we looked at the experts because this is the ultimate goal, but we need to plan the stages to get there. And of course, you can identify how to get there. One way of finding out how you can get there is looking at the resources I mentioned a moment ago, the black rectangles. And of course, you can explore other development opportunities, attending an event like this, doing one of the courses that César will be talking about, learning from Ben's stories and Ben Goldstein's books, which are absolutely great. So these are ways of helping you to understand how you can get to expert level, right? And once you get to the expert levels and you understand your own development and you understand how you can plan your own development, my recommendation for you is fly high, because all those opportunities are there for you, and there is a world to explore. And the idea here is to give you ways of organizing your journey and giving yourself some professional development direction. Yeah. Well, I would like to end by, once again, celebrating Teachers' Day, congratulating all of you, all of us, on this very special day, right? And I have some references and some links that I have shared with you throughout the presentation, and some sources as well. And of course, I have some time to answer questions. So let me go to questions and see. I have quite a few here to answer. Maybe I should do away with the slide, right? And if I stop sharing, I'll be able to see you as I answer the question, and you'll be able to see me as well. Okay, so time for questions. Nowadays, translation devices are getting popular, and many students think learning a language is not necessary anymore. How can we engage students with this mindset? This is a very interesting question, Franciele. And at the same rate that we see the development in translation devices, we also see the development, or maybe the frequency in the demand for mastering a language effectively, especially the English language. We know that devices, softwares, gadgets are everywhere. They become really, really popular. But maybe we as teachers need to understand, and we need to help students to understand as well, is that at the end of the day, if they want to get to a certain position in their profession, or if they want to do a specialization in the academic world, there is a demand for mastering a language, and mastering a language at a high level, at least level B2. It's important to let students know that they can have all the conveniences available, all the tech available, but the demand will be on them, not on the device. So how many times do we hear of adult professionals or maybe academics who, are desperate because they need a proficiency exam for an opportunity, but they haven't been able to develop their language skills to that required level. It's important to keep students aware of this demand, right? Well, another question here from Talita. Students are more distracted than ever. We as teachers try to catch their attention using many tools, but sometimes it is not enough. Could you give us new tools or some you use to try to catch the most distracted? Well, Talita, this is such a big question, and there are so many angles to this question. I think one thing we need to consider, and we see the debate nowadays, is how we can manage behavior in a teaching environment. For example, some municipalities now have law against the use of mobile phones in the classroom. Whether or not you support this idea, one thing that maybe the society is learning now is that we need to do something about this. We need to manage behavior, for example, when we use devices, because, everything becomes a big boom. And then later we realize that they have benefits, but also they have drawbacks. So I think one of the things we need to consider is take a step back and understand how can I manage this behavior? What can I do that can be useful for me and my students? And what kind of backup do I have from the school if you teach in a school? Because maybe you might be teaching students privately. But if you are teaching in an institution and there is a policy, make the students aware of the policy and see how much backup you can get from the school. If you're teaching privately, make sure you establish very clear routines with students, because this, I think, is where the secret is. I'm not saying that this is easy, right? Because it starts also with us establishing those routines. But we need to come to a consensus in terms of what is good behavior while they are in the classroom or in the private classroom learning the language. I think we need to consider and take this step back. We have another very interesting question as well about AI. Do you think, this is anonymous, but it's someone from Rio. Do you think AI can play a role in teacher development? How can we use it to improve our career? Well, I think teacher development can be done in many different ways. Yeah, like I mentioned, teacher education involves us, taking our own initiatives, making our own decisions about how to develop. And I think one of the ways is understanding how AI is used, because it's something that we are learning. We are all learning, and I include myself here. I'm not a highly technical or technological person, but I'm making an effort to use AI to understand how it can best help me. But I think as a teacher, my question is, okay, AI is there, it's available to all the students, it's in every device, but how can we use it pedagogically? It's not about avoiding it, but it's about bringing it to the focus and giving it a pedagogical purpose. Just to give you an example, it's common for students to get a piece of writing done by AI. They can submit it to you and say, teacher, I did the homework, I wrote the composition, I did the writing task. And then you look at it and you say, no, it can't have been you, because the language here is not the language that you use in general. You used AI for this. But okay, how about setting a writing task and with the students getting AI to do the writing task? Students will understand that you are using their tool or their tools. And then they can maybe see what they can learn from this experience with you, and the learners giving AI tasks, getting the answer from AI, and then the students maybe can say, teacher, this answer here given by AI is a bit too sophisticated, or teacher, AI didn't do well here. And you can bring AI, you can bring the tools into your teaching practice, involve the learners, and I think this will end up helping your professional development. Do we happen to have any more questions? Let me look at the Q&A section here. Teaching, Amanda says she would like to hear about teaching AI in using cell phones in class. Well, Amanda, as I mentioned, the discussion is growing. It's becoming more popular now to bring this discussion to institutions, etc. I think, as I said, if it depends on us with private students, we have to set very clear boundaries and establish very, very clear routines. If you are teaching in a school, we need to understand what the policy is in that school so that we can see how we can best use cell phones in class, because they are really useful tools. However, students only see them from a completely different perspective. For students, it's a way of having fun and maybe in class they will end up doing other things, but not the task that you said, right? Sandra has a comment here. She deals with adult learners. She noticed there is a big gap with students' background knowledge, but knowledge of grammar, etc. Maybe this is due poor educational background. Well, Sandra, I think this could have many reasons, the poor background that we say. But I would like to go back to something in the framework about expert teachers, is that expert teachers, they focus and they depart when they are planning a lesson from the learner's needs. I think we need to consider those adult learners at elementary level. We need to consider their needs and then see how we can best fill those gaps. Maybe this group of students will need a bit more time to achieve, the language goals because of those gaps, but it's about understanding the problems. Well, Sérgio, I think I have spoken a lot. We still have something to do before we move to César, right?
Yes, yes. First of all, thanks a lot, Alberto. It was really a nice talk. It was very useful to know more about the Cambridge English Teaching Framework. Thanks a lot for that. And before we present our next guest, Alberto would like to talk to you very quickly about the CQs. Okay? It's over to you, Alberto. Thank you.
Thank you, Sérgio. It's me again. And this time, this will be a really, really short presentation about the Cambridge English qualifications, or the famous Cambridge exams, right? So you know that Cambridge has a history with language exams, the Cambridge English qualifications. So I'm going to give you a quick overview to mention some new things about it, yeah? So I would like to start by setting you a task, and the task is spot the mistake. Look at this diagram and try to find what the problem is with it. Where is the mistake in the diagram? Where is the mistake in the diagram? Can you spot? There's something missing there. Talita says that there is no mistake. Well, actually, Talita, there is one mistake in the diagram. Who wants to give it a go? Okay. Brigitte has said something about it. And Gisele and Camila. Okay, some of you have spotted already what the problem is. Well, when we look at the Cambridge exams, they are not called like that. Actually, they are called like this: pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, A2 flyers, A2 key, all the way up to C2 proficiency. So when we look at the Cambridge exams, the name of the exams always start with the levels from the Common European Framework. So this is the correct nomenclature of the exams as we know them, right? So the Cambridge exams, or Cambridge has this suite of language exams for children, starting from pre-A1 starters all the way to A2 flyers, but then exams for teenagers and adults starting from A2 key all the way to C2 proficiency. Those three exams here, those three levels, A2, B1, and B2, they also have a variation, which is the 4 schools version of the exam. So basically, the exam is the same, but the input texts, like the listening materials and the reading materials, they are more related to students at school age, yeah? And we have this variation of 4 schools, only those 3 levels. And if we look at all those levels, starting from A2 key all the way to C2 proficiency, we now have a digital version of the exam that you can sit or your students can sit, yeah? So we have the digital CEQs of Cambridge English Qualifications starting from A2 key for schools, but we also have the digital exams for the general version. That is A2 key, B1 preliminary, B2 first, onwards, all in digital format, yeah? So this is the new thing I would like to share with you. So the Cambridge English Qualifications, as you know, they have been in Brazil for over 8 decades. They started over a century ago, right? And those exams are now available in 2 formats, paper-based and digital. And because we now have a digital version of the exam, the digital version of the exam is fast. So results after you sit the exam are delivered in 5 to 10 working days. Well, the exam is flexible because exam sessions can happen throughout the year as long as the center that you register your students or the center where you register to sit the exam offers them. Because the paper-based version has an international calendar of dates. The digital exam is flexible and the center can offer the exams at any point. Then we recommend going to the center to find when you can sit the exam at a convenient date, yeah? So it's flexible. Also, it is a preferred way of sitting the exam because it has digital features and we are all used to using digital devices. We write using gadgets and computers, etc. And also, because of those digital features, there are things that candidates will have more control. For example, you can use the headphone for the listening so you can control the volume. You can have control over the font size. If you want a bigger font size, you can choose. You also have control about whether you want a dark screen with the white fonts or maybe a white screen with the black font. So you have some options and you have control. And it is also secure. If there is more than one candidate in a room sitting the same exam, the items are randomized and the items will be different for the different candidates. So there are many new features when we talk about the Cambridge exams in digital format, right? So one important thing to highlight to you is that the exams have not changed. They are the same, regardless of the format, paper-based or digital. But digital has features, like I mentioned here, that will make, the time between registering and sitting the exam much shorter. And also the time between sitting the exam and getting the results, they are also much, much shorter now in the digital format. And if you want your students to sit a Cambridge exam, or if you want to sit a Cambridge exam yourself as part of your professional development, find an exam center to go to, and then you can check, which format the center offers and the best date for you to sit your Cambridge exam. So all you need to do is scan the QR code to access the menu of authorized centers in Brazil. So if you are preparing students for the exams or whether you are sitting the exam yourselves, good luck with the exam, everyone, and thank you very much for listening. Now, Sérgio, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Alberto. Just a second, please. I will share my screen in order to introduce our next guest. But thanks a lot, Alberto, as always. Very useful, very informative talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just bear with me. All right, so we have now our last but no means least guest, our colleague César Bizetto, with his talk, Professional Development Pathways, Taking Ownership of Your Career and Making Informed Choices. Holding a Master's of Science degree in Nuclear Technology, César Bizetto found his true vocation as an English teacher. He has 21 years of experience in teaching learners at all ages and levels of proficiency. César is currently head of teaching, learning, and assessment at São Paulo Open Century. He's a CELTA tutor and has been working with teachers from Brazil, China, and the UK. He's also a program leader and mentor for the Cambridge International Certificates in Teaching Bilingual Learners and Classroom Practice. His current field of study and research is assessment practices with focus on how different types of assessment can be used to inform, improve, promote fairness, equity, and inclusion in the teaching and learning process. César, it's a great honor to have you with us. Happy Teachers' Day to you, and it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Well, I know it's the third talk in the end of the day, but I'd like to start saying Happy Teachers' Day to everyone. It's a challenge and a responsibility giving a talk after Ben and Alberto, but I think I'll be up to it. Sergio, if you can stop sharing your screen so that I can start sharing mine, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
Alberto has mentioned I will talk about some courses, and I sure will. Are you seeing my correct screen? Can you say me in the chat?
Yes.
Yeah, good. But before we actually talk about possibilities, I want to go through some aspects of professional development so that we understand that our possibilities we can do in our career. Alberto has just showed us Cambridge framework, which gives us a very good overview of areas we can focus, where we are, where we want to go, how we can develop that. And so I divided my presentation. I will talk a little bit of my own professional development, then key aspects on professional development, how we can investigate our own development, what to focus on, and some suggestions. I put as suggestions because there's no recipe. It depends a lot on where you are at the moment, on your context, and we will go through it now. So as mentioned, and Alberto mentioned, he knows many people that they actually come from other backgrounds, and I come from a different background, right? I started teaching when I was 15 because I'm from the countryside of Paraná. You're a good student, you finish the course, you're invited to teach. But I actually decided to study physics. But in the meantime, I continued as an English teacher. But you know, I just stepped into the classroom, no formal training, no support, just learn by doing. And I actually insisted on physics, and I ended up doing a master's in nuclear technology. This is the reason I moved to São Paulo. And then when I finished my master's degree, I knew physics was not what I wanted as a career. I knew that I was passionate about teaching English, but then I was lost. It's okay. How can I have a career in language teaching? Because up to that moment, I was just teaching in my free time. This was more of a hobby. How can I make ends meet? So I was kind of lost where to go. And here comes my first, and I think the most important thing when we talk about professional development, we need support. So we need to find this network of support. Not only like people that can support us, but also we need to be the support to other people to help them. So I would like you to reflect on who are the people that have provided you support, and are you being supportive to new teachers or to colleagues who might need help in their practice? And I chose 3 people here, not because they are the only ones, but because they gave me support in key moments of my career and give me support until today. The first one here is the owner of a school here in São Paulo, that she gave me a job when I arrived here, and she believed in me. And when I decided, okay, I want just to teach English, I don't want to work with physics anymore, she gave me more hours. She believed I was doing a good job, so she gave me more opportunities so that I could get by with teaching English. The other one is she's my best friend today, even though she doesn't live here in Brazil anymore, but we keep in touch. And we met when we were doing a certification, and she provides me with lots of support when I need to revise my presentations, when I need professional advice. I don't know what to choose professionally, so we can have a chat and discuss possibilities. And also, this is my current boss. She's the CEO and founder of São Paulo Open Center. She's the person that buys all my ideas, that believed I could work with teacher training and provide me all the opportunities. I couldn't have achieved things I have without her support. And she believes that lots of support to other people is important to build a network, what she calls a network of good, so we can help people. So think around your environment. Who are giving you support, or are you being the support to someone to help them thrive? This was I think my first and the most important idea when we talk about professional development. Mainly nowadays, sometimes it's very difficult to cope with the challenges of our profession. The second aspect, Ben mentioned flexibility in his presentation. And I think we need lots of flexibility in today's world. So we need to adapt to the needs of students. We need to adapt to things that are changing fast. You've mentioned with Alberto, AI, students getting distracted. So we need to be flexible and adapt to some situations. And one thing that I would like you to read is a quote, and it's actually a photograph I took in the IATEFL conference this year it was a plenary from Letícia Singanotto. She was talking about the plurilingual world and professional development. So take a moment to read this quote about changes and about things being flexible. So we need to bear in mind that everything changes. We might 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the way I learned English, and most of you may have learned English the same way, it's not the only way nowadays. We have different contexts of teaching, and teachers needed to adapt, to learn new strategies, learn new skills to deal with different contexts of teaching. So this is where I would like to mention flexibility, and I would like to bring context. So if you can put in the chat, when I mention context, what context of teaching could you name in the chat? What context could you teach English today? Good. So we have here online and face-to-face. This is definitely a context we have. Adult learners, yes. Lots of different age groups. So you can teach very young learners, teens, adult learners, in company, business, Bilingual schools, good. Private language institutes, public, good. So I named here some contexts. Thank you for your participation. I think you covered most of my context here. So I named here what I mean by ELT, English language teaching. I refer to it to the way I learned 20, 30 years ago. Private language institutes or schools, the way I learned. So this is a context. You may be teaching in a private language school. You may be teaching online, face-to-face, privately, English as the content itself. And then here in Brazil, we've had this movement of in schools and then extended hours. And then we had this movement of bilingual education. And this is a very broad term nowadays because we have the real bilingual schools, we have bilingual programs. So this is one context you could be inserted. International education, we're now talking about international education. And just to clarify, when we talk about international education, we need to make a clear difference of international education and international schools. An international school is a school that follows a curriculum from a specific country. When we talk about international education, I'm referring to a Brazilian school following the Brazilian curriculum, but they add components of international standards. For example, I don't know if you all have heard, Cambridge has a sister board that is called Cambridge International Education, that they offer an international curriculum. So many Brazilian schools adopt the international school, the Cambridge International School curriculum, but they are not international schools, but they have this concept of internationalization in their curriculum. And here it's where content teachers can also teach in English. So there is, there is another movement and some opportunities for people with language knowledge. And then I also put here that nowadays, as you mentioned, online, face-to-face, we can have a national career, but also an international career. So you can still be in Brazil, but you can have students from other parts of the world, or you can work for institutions in other parts of the world. There are lots of opportunities here where you can teach online for other institutions in different countries, and you don't need to leave your home. So these are some contexts of teaching, and they definitely impact what we need to focus in terms of professional development. And here is, in this context, we can be the content teacher. You can be like English teacher. We have English, we're teaching English, but you can be an English teacher in a regular school or in a private language school. It's a different context. You have different regulations to follow. You have different standards to follow. You can be a private teacher, teaching online, teaching face-to-face, private language schools that I've already mentioned. So the basis is always the classroom. So the basis, the teacher. So without the teacher, all the other things I'm going to mention now, they wouldn't be possible. Okay, but what other possibilities can I have in the English teaching world? Well, you can decide to work with materials writing. It can be a desire, it can be a professional goal. You can become an academic consultant. You mentioned bilingual programs. We have publishing houses. You can have a position as an academic consultant in one of them. You can work with teacher training or teacher education. You can be a private teacher trainer, offering your own courses. You can become in the future a tutor from one of the international qualifications. You can say, okay, I want to work in academic management as a coordinator, as a academic manager. You can become an examiner. You can take the role of a speaking examiner, writing examiner. Different boards are offering different opportunities for you to work as examiner. be it writing or speaking examiner, be it face-to-face or online roles as an examiner, or you can, if you think you would like to do research, to work in the academy, doing research in the area. So these are some possibilities you can foresee as careers, depending on your goals, depending on your interests. These are some possibilities, but for different possibilities, we need different things. If we look at these scenarios, can we survive with the same equipment in all these scenarios? It would be the same when we are choosing our professional development paths, right? So it's important that you have goals, that you establish goals, that you know where to look at, so that you can choose, because there are so many things available nowadays. Many things available that are free. There are things that you've mentioned in the chat, some in some places that they have a cost. Sometimes they're not as cheap as we think they should be. So you need to make these informed decisions from what you need, what you're going to choose. Are you choosing the right path? So you need to make decisions informed. And one of the things that it's very important is that your choices, they're aligned with the context where you work. Because when you choose a qualification, when you choose to take a course, when you choose to attend a webinar, a workshop, mainly when we take more long-term courses, they need to have a link with your current context, or they need to have a clear link with your future goal, so that you can see things setting into place, and you can see things you can apply to your practice, so that you can see results. So think of how your choices, they are aligned with your current context or with your future context, if you're planning on changing a little bit what you're doing. But they need to align, or else you're not going to be motivated all the time, and you see no point in investing time, and many times investing money in that specific professional development path. And then Alberto has mentioned a lot about looking at your own practice, which areas you need to focus. And I'd like to mention two things that are important for teachers who want to think of their professional development. The first one is reflective practice, which is not a new concept, but we've been talking a lot about reflection, about reflecting upon our own practices. If you can very quickly in the chat, what do you usually reflect upon after a lesson? Would you say you reflect more upon things that worked or things that did not work? How effective it was? Things that worked? If students achieved the goals? Things that didn't work? Okay, so we tend to focus more on things that went wrong. And okay, that's okay. So why? Was it because of I didn't consider the group? It was not like related to my students? Did I sacked? Did I give the wrong instructions? It's okay to focus on what didn't work, but it's important to focus on what actually worked and why. Because sometimes we get so focused, okay, this didn't work, that didn't work, and then we have a negative attitude towards our practice. But okay, focus on things you can do, things that worked, why, and is it possible to replicate that in the future with other groups? So it's important to look at things you can do, and also to have more broad idea that you are doing good things in your practice. Not only there are good things, there are other things that you might want to change, but focus on everything. So through reflective practice, and just a quick definition of reflective practice, we only become reflective if we question our own practice. And then if we respond to that, because, okay, that didn't work because of this, period. So you're not a reflective practitioner. To be a reflective practitioner, you need to reflect, understand, and be able to analyze the situation, but propose a change. And then you need to apply the change so that you can see things moving forward. So this is becoming reflective. And then another important thing is to ask yourselves, to question yourselves. So this is a very difficult word to pronounce, and I thought many times, well, should I keep it? So inquiry and questioning your own practices. So when we use this, we question even our assumptions. So we all have assumptions. When we step into the classroom, we all have assumptions of the way we should teach, the way students learn, but we should be able to question that. We should be able to see evidence and say, okay, I think it's high time I changed this because it's not working. So we need to be able to question. We need to be able to change, to look at other ways of doing things. We have to discover who we are as teachers. So somebody mentioned earlier in the chat about teachers becoming entertainers. Are you that kind of teacher? Are you comfortable with that? If you're not, you don't need to seek that. So you need to find yourself as a teacher. How can you best help your students? How can you best be this, provide support to learners' progress? So who you are as a teacher. And of course, we need to understand our own students and their needs. And this is pretty much related to context, because in any sense, we're going to understand all students in all contexts. We need to understand our own learners. And some things that are very general, they might not work with that specific group. So you might try new things and see what works for your own groups. Mentioned considering the context. We need to see teachers as creator of knowledge. What do we mean by creating knowledge? Because for many years in the past, teachers were seen as, okay, you seek for training and then you apply what you learned in training. That's it. No, you were in the classroom, you were doing things, you're observing things, and from your own observations, you know what happens. You know what works, you know what doesn't work, you know, so you have a lot to share. You need to see yourselves as this creator of knowledge and having things to share. And then it comes to the last one here, which is collaboration. We need to have a network of collaboration, sharing our ideas, sharing our experiences, sharing good experiences, bad experiences, sharing challenges. Maybe something that is a challenge for us, you may find someone who has already overcome that might help you, that might give you some tips, some ideas. So this is really important to question yourselves in the process. Okay, and then we go through the what. Okay, what should we focus on? There are so many things to improve, to change. Well, Alberto gave you a good idea with the frameworks, right? So frameworks, they help us focus. They help us have an idea of where we are and where we want to go. So I'd like to, before going to frameworks, because the frameworks, they work with pedagogical knowledge. These are things we should focus. So general teaching strategies. So this would be ideal for every teacher, not only for language teachers. Then pedagogical content knowledge. So this is related to the content you teach. For example, for language, for English, how you teach speaking, listening, writing, reading. So knowledge over that. Content knowledge. So as a physicist, if I want to teach physics, I need to have subject area expertise. If you're teaching English, you need to know the language and, of course, know how to explain the language. And as Alberto mentioned, knowledge of the learners and learning with learning processes theories. And then we go to frameworks. Alberto presented Cambridge English framework. I'm going to bring some other frameworks that are possibilities that you can use. This is from the E-Equals, which is the evaluation and accreditation of quality language services. You see that's very similar. It brings areas and sub-areas within each of the areas that can guide you where you can develop where you are, how you can develop yourselves. Another framework that you might want to use, it's the framework from the British Council. They also have a framework for teachers' professional development. As Alberto did an amazing job with the framework, I'm not going to delve into the frameworks. I just want you to know that you have documents where you can see, okay, in this area, I need further development. I can look at it into more details, because sometimes we're not so sure of what to do. And these are specific for language teaching. So the E-Equals and the British Council. This one is from Cambridge International Education. This is more holistic, because Cambridge International works, as I mentioned, with international curriculum. So they offer subjects. They offer English as a second language. They offer English as a first language. They offer global perspectives, science, math, and then for higher levels, like more than 70 subjects in English. So this is for teachers in general, and then Cambridge work with different domains. So if you want to have a view that a little bit outside of, okay, what is expected from a teacher in general. So, and you will see it's not much different from what is expected from a language teacher, but from the language teacher, we're going to have the language component very strong. And here it's more the classroom, the teaching and learning process, which is very, very strong here, so that you can have a broader idea. And then this is the Cambridge English teaching. This is the framework Alberto presented, which I think it's an amazing tool for you to look at. Okay, where am I foundation? Where am I developing, proficient, and expert? And then you see which of the sub areas you might need more training, because this will be more. This will help you narrow down your choices of what to do in terms of professional development. And then I could not talk about professional development without talking about further development in the area of assessment. This is my current field of research. So, but it's not only because of that. It's because for me, I see that assessment is a kind of a conduit of the teaching and learning process. So it's important that when we focus on professional development, that we look at assessment practices. And I really think this quote tells a lot about assessment, the engine that drives learning. So this is for me the reason I think we should look at assessment with a more in-depth approach in the classroom. I'm not talking about assessment in the end of the process. And of course, research says that it's, and this is the reason I'm bringing this in to talk about professional development possibilities, because assessment is not part of teacher education as it should be. As I mentioned, I have a degree in physics, and even if I was teaching physics, I didn't have anything to do with assessment in the area. And then many courses I took regarding language teaching, they did not talk much about assessment. Assessment was like a bit of it. So it's important that we think of assessment as part of our professional development. And here It's where I would like your quick help. You can scan or you can use the link in the chat. It's a very quick research I'm doing about assessment. I know there are some people here that are not from Brazil and not teaching in Brazil. So you might not be able to answer because there is a question specifically from where you are in Brazil. So if you can take a minute or two to answer that, it will help me a lot because I'll have I'll participate in a conference about professional development for teachers, and this is the topic of my presentation. So I'd appreciate if you could help me with that. It's very quick. So if you can open, take a look and just answer it. And think of assessment as an area you might look further in your professional development. And then I would like to go to actions, but before presenting my ideas, my suggestions, and it's not a recipe, it's not written in stone. Because, for example, being here today is a sign of that you are pursuing professional development. I would like to hear from you in the chat. What actions can you take to look into professional development? So attending a webinar like this, a program like this is one action. What others have you taken recently or you think you can take for your own professional development? I'm going to give you some moment because I asked you to do two things at the same time, right? Help me with the research and talk about your actions. Okay, good. Someone mentioned taking a C1 course, probably a prep course to take the certification. Taking a qualification like the CELTA course, good. Thank you, those who have filled out the form. Continuous training, this is part of continuous training. Taking a Delta, okay, we're going to talk about it in a while. Affiliate to teacher organizations, good to mention that, Thais, I'll talk about it. Taking courses, exchange ideas with other teachers, good. So here are some ideas I put. Self and peer assessment. When I mention self-assessment is the reflection. How much do you reflect upon your lesson? But you can take the framework, you can choose a framework, or you can take the Cambridge English framework and choose a specific area. And then in that area, look at the details. And then after you teach the lesson, you may self-assess yourself according to the descriptors, so that you can have an idea of things you have achieved or not. You may record the audio of your lesson so that you can listen to it and self-assess what you're doing. If possible, depending on how, if you teach online and you can record, if you teach in a school and the school gives you permission to record your lessons, it's a possibility. You can invite a colleague to observe your lesson and give you feedback on a specific area. So I decided that the area I want to develop with this specific group is about the way I give instructions to them. So invite a peer to observe your lesson and talk and give you feedback on how you gave instructions. It can be a peer, a coordinator, so build this network of collaboration. As I mentioned here, attending webinars, workshops, and there are plenty of them available without any cost. Cambridge offers lots of possibilities. You also have, somebody mentioned teacher organizations like the BRASTESOL, which is the Brazilian organization for language teachers. Ben mentioned the IATAFL, which is the international organization. So these organizations, they have lots of different things, different possibilities. BRASTESOL has annual conferences. This year was face-to-face in Goiânia. Next year will be online. So 1 year is face-to-face, the other year is online. So that if you cannot afford to travel, you can take the online conference. You can present in the conference. Presenting in a conference, like writing an abstract, a proposal, and presenting in a conference, it's a very good professional development experience. As I mentioned, conferences, right? Attending and presenting. Courses, certifications, and qualifications. Research, like you can do your own research, like you can read books, you can read articles, you can do some investigations with your own students and see what the data you're collecting can reveal, and how you can go about the issues. And again, you see that I'm bringing here collaboration. Collaboration is the key. We cannot be alone. We need to support other people, and we need the support of other people in our careers. I will address that question, Madeleine, when I finish, okay? Because I think it's a nice one. And then I'd like to focus now in one specific area here, which is courses and qualifications. There are plenty of things available. Again, there are things that are free. So if you look, there are quality things that are free, starting by looking at Cambridge website. If you go to Cambridge English website, you have plenty of resources on exam preparation, lesson planning, even, for example, teaching students with dyslexia. So there are lesson plans, like there are resources that you can use. You have webinars for teachers, you have moments like this, which is rich for professional development. You have the Cambridge Day in different parts of Brazil and online. So there are many things you can do, quality and free. As I mentioned, being participating in conferences as an attendee, presenting in a conference, but then I want to focus on courses, certifications, and qualifications. This is important because depending on the context where you're going to work or you have a goal to work, they will require a formal certification. So, and then how can you choose the right one for you? I'll start tackling. You need first to identify your area of development. The first one is language development. What is your current level of proficiency according to the CFR? So where do you want to get? Are you a B1, a B2? Are you C1? Are you already C2? First, if you want to go from one level to another, you need to take a language course. There are plenty of language courses for teachers available. Or if you already have the level and you want to sit for a B2 first or a C1 advanced, a C2 proficiency, but you may not feel secure enough with the task format, so you take an exam prep. So there are exam preparation courses for teachers that will help you feel more confident to sit for the exam. And Alberto mentioned the digital version of the exams. I feel more comfortable with them because you're writing, you type the writing, it counts the word for you. So I might recommend that. But you have to understand the difference between developing language in terms of your proficiency level, the way you communicate, the way you can understand the language, you can spot mistakes from learners, and the way you analyze language, that you can address language in your lessons, which is the area of language awareness. So you might be proficient, but you might not be language aware. This happens to us, or I don't know everybody, but I can talk about myself. In Portuguese, I'm proficient in Portuguese, but I'm not language aware. It means I cannot teach Portuguese because I have no knowledge of what lies behind the language. So language awareness. And then again, you can find a course on language awareness, or you can read about language awareness. There are good authors that write about language awareness, and you can learn, you can read books on specific areas like, okay, what do you think you want to learn more? Is it phonology? So You can take courses in phonology. There are people that offers nice courses on tackling pronunciation and learning phonology and using phonology in the class. But then you can also read. There are books that will tackle phonology and how you can address phonology in your lessons. But then, okay, language itself is not what I'm looking in terms of development. Then we're talking about teaching, teacher education, management. So when I talk about teaching, it's like developing yourself as a teacher, teaching skills, dealing with the learners, dealing with classroom management, lesson planning. And then I decided to divide into some contexts here. The first context, what I call ELT, means you teach English as a subject. So I teach English. I'm not teaching science, I'm not teaching math in English. It's not a bilingual education, or it's English. I teach online, I teach adult learners, I teach teenagers, but it's English. So you can look at your professional development so far, and then that's the reason the frameworks are important, where you are. Because, for example, you might realize that the TKT, and then remember the TKT, we have modules 1, 2, and 3, young learners include. 1, 2, and 3, they deal with lesson planning, classroom management, all the teaching strategies. That you can take a course in which you will learn the strategies, and then you sit for the test, you have your certification. Remember that the TKT is very good to show you have the knowledge. Okay, but then I'll like something that has practice. Then some of you mentioned the CELTA and the Delta. I wrote here the levels. When we talk about, for example, level 5, the CELTA, there are others, but I'm mentioning the CELTA. Level 7, the Delta. These levels in the UK, they refer to the level of ability, or the depth of abilities you need to show when you take these courses. That's the reason they say, oh, a Delta develops you the abilities that are related to a master's degree. It is not equivalent to a master's. In some universities abroad, if you have a full Delta, it means modules 1, 2, and 3, you have the diploma, and you're taking a master's in teaching English as a second language, you may be exempt of 30% of the credits, because the Delta displays the same abilities you should develop in a master's. And the CELTA, the abilities that are comparable to a degree level. So the CELTA, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that I have been teaching for quite a while, and I took the CELTA and was amazing. That happened to me. So I have been teaching for more than 10 years when I took the CELTA, and it was like eye-opening and world-changing. It was when I said, okay, I have a career. I can have different pathways. It was when I decided I want to be a CELTA tutor in the future. So the CELTA will give you the tools to prepare your lessons, how you can deal with teaching reading, listening, speaking, how you plan the stages of a lesson, how you address vocabulary, grammar, using the communicative approach. And it has the input sessions, means like the theory with your tutors, and you have the practical component, which is you have teaching practices. The center where you choose to do your CELTA needs to provide you with a group of students. You need to teach at least 2 levels of students, and you're going to teach at least 6 hours. And then you're going to be observed by your tutor, by your peers. You're going to receive feedback from your tutors, from your peers, and you need to show progress to receive the certification. And the CELTA is by far the most recognized teaching certification in the world. As I mentioned, an international career. If you want to teach abroad, you can be in Brazil teaching for an institution in the UK, in Australia. They will require you a CELTA. You don't teach for institutions abroad without having this certification. Then the Delta is more specialized. So I don't recommend skipping the CELTA and going straight to Delta. Don't do it. It's very in-depth. Module 1 of Delta is a test. So you need to prepare for the test, and it's a test about all the knowledge in terms of language teaching, in terms of lesson planning, classroom management, dealing with the learners. You know, all the framework Alberto mentioned, everything will be in this test. Module 2 of Delta is similar to the CELTA. So you're going to have input sessions, you're going to write assignments, you're going to plan lessons to be observed and to pass so that you can receive the certification. And the module 3 of the Delta is an extended assignment. You need to choose a field of expertise, for example, teaching young learners, teaching using CLIO, teaching exam prep, teaching business English, and you have to write a course proposal. So it's like a dissertation. Apart from this, if you're teaching in regular schools and you don't have a degree in letras, language, or pedagogy, you need that, because in a regular school, by our legislation, you need that degree. So that might be your goal if you want to teach in a regular school. You can think of a postgraduate certificate, master's, or PhD. These were all for language teaching. Now, if you're thinking of possibilities, because there are many possibilities in the bilingual international education context and good opportunities opening there, you might focus on TKT, but the CLIO. So you take a prep course where you learn the foundations of CLIO, then you take the test, you show you have knowledge. And again, to work in a regular school, you need a degree. So if you don't have, investing in a degree in letras or pedagogy, if you want to be in this context, is important. You can take, if you already have a degree, you may think of taking an extension course at university. But Cambridge, not Cambridge English, but Cambridge International, has international qualifications for teaching in this context, which is the Certificate in Teaching Bilingual Learners. This is a level 4 certification, again, with this worldwide recognition, and it's a certification in teaching. So you have content with your tutor, so input sessions to talk about bilingual education, bilingual pedagogies, to talk about CLIO, lesson planning in that context. And you also have teaching practices in which you're going to plan a lesson, you're going to be observed by your tutor, receive feedback. All the assessment is done in the UK, and then you receive a certification. This is a 150-hour course, which has theory and practice embedded. So if you're thinking of shifting your career to this area, this might be a good choice. And also the possibilities of having postgraduate certificate, a master's degree, or a PhD in the area. Okay, but then I want to work with teacher education, teacher training, management. Well, then it's important that if you want to work, for example, as a CELTA tutor in the future, you will be required a level 7. You cannot become a CELTA tutor without having a Delta. But if your goal is to work in management, like being a school coordinator, Cambridge International also has a certification that is called the Certificate in Educational Leadership, which is going to help you build the skills and knowledge in terms of becoming an educational management. And I also recommend this MBA from USP. USP has a MBA in educational management that might be a good choice for you. Are these the only choices? No. It would be impossible for me to bring all the possibilities. These are some ideas, but again, you need to look at your context. You need to look at your professional goals. You need to look at your own experience. You need to talk to people so you can make decisions more informed. And just to finish, I want to bring Letizia again, because it was an amazing plenary. That we need to bear in mind that everything is going to change. So we need, as teachers, to be aware of these changes. And we need to look at education that being the only constant. And we are there doing our best. So I'd like to finalize again saying Happy Teachers Day. And then now I'll address some questions, but these are references I brought. And then here, if you want to reach me, if you want to ask more about courses, about possibilities, understand what fits better in your context, you can reach me. I can try to help you out. Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Let me.
Thanks a lot, César. I believe we have some questions. Could you please check your WhatsApp, please?
So there is one question here. There has been an increase of students with learning difficulties such as ADHD. How can teachers in different support levels, to trainers, supervisors, adapt and deal with this? Well, yes, and this is something we're experiencing with like exams as well, though we have more people requesting special arrangements for exams. When we think of students with educational needs, one of the things that is important is variety. We need to have a variety of activities and tasks so that everybody is involved. This is the first thing. The second one is each student is going to be something different. That's the reason it's very difficult to say, for example, we're going to have to adapt the course book, because each student will need a different kind of adaptation. So these are things that I know it sometimes lies on our shoulders as teachers, but everybody must be involved, like the school itself. You need the support. So first of all, you need to know what kind of support the student needs. But the first thing I say, and this is something we've been talking to a person that is providing us some consultancy in the area, because she works with us, and she's a teacher and she's a mother of a child in the spectrum. So she says variety. So everybody's involved. So then you might have the chance to address the students. And then again, support. And then as a language teacher, I mentioned collaboration. Talk to the other teachers. You need to find the support within the other teachers, because the language teacher sometimes is with the student like what? Twice a week, 3 times, or 1 class a day. The other teachers, if we're talking about primary, the other teacher is with the student most of the time. So you need to find that support, okay? Let me see here. There is one more coming. So how to deal with teachers that have lots of experience, but they're not open to technology such as AI, platforms, new methodology. Yeah, that's tough, right? When we talked about having lots of experience, doesn't mean everything. This is something I came across when I worked as an academic consultant. So I went to the school to observe lesson, and then sometimes the teacher was not open to feedback or to changing the practice. So I would say that the first thing, if you are a leadership, it's building connection and trying to show this teacher that the things are changing, that if they don't change, they're going to stay behind. They're not going to have the students with them anymore, and that you're there trying to help them. And then sometimes the person is reluctant because actually they have a hard time with technology, sometimes like dealing with an app or the platform. So check if you can provide the support so that person can deal with the platform. And then once they learn, they might be more open, because sometimes it's just a technical issue. It's not only a barrier, but I would say the collaboration here would help. Okay, somebody's asking to show the slides with the references again. I'll put on screen so that you can have it. Can you see it?
Yes.
I'll leave it there for a while I answer another one. I know many teachers who don't care at all about teacher development. Why do you think it happens? Lack of interest, money, support? I think a little bit of everything here. Because sometimes we expect that the school we work or the company we work will pay for our development. This would be amazing. Sometimes we do find places that they invest in our development. Sometimes we don't. And if that's the case, you need to look at your career as something that belongs to you, not to the other. So, and then you can look at things and have a goal. Okay, I'm going to invest. Sometimes I'm talking about investing time, not money, but I'm going to invest my time, I'm going to invest my money so that I can pursue a better position. And sometimes it's just the lack of interest, but I would say we've been through some challenging times, and some people they are just tired. It's not because they're not interested, you're just tired. A lot of challenge. That's the reason I mentioned support. Maybe this person is just tired with lots of challenges, because there is pressure from families, there is pressure from the school, students' behavior. So maybe the support might help. And the lack of money. So that's the reason I mentioned we have lots of things we can do that can help us develop, and they don't need money investment. Okay. And let me see. I think we're done with questions. Let me see if there are any.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thanks a lot, César.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a great talk. In the name of Cambridge, I'd like to thank you very much, César, for being with us. I think you gave great suggestions. I think everyone can now take informed decisions and make informed choices now after watching your talk. I'm sure everyone was able to relate to everything of what you said. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And see you next time. That's for sure. Thank you. Now we are getting to the end of this lovely afternoon, but it's raffle time, so it's not the end yet. So if you just bear with me, I just would like to share the codes that you will be able to scan. Yes, can you all see it? So, so you need to, in order to be part of the raffle, you need to scan this QR code and put your full name to run for the prizes. Okay. After a few seconds, we will ask the software to spin the wheel and select one of the names that you put in. So then we'll check the list of attendance and we'll get in touch with you to send you the gifts. Okay. So I'll give you a few seconds. So you can scan the code and put your complete name. While you do that, I'm just talking about the gifts. We're raffling 2 sets of gifts, and each set has 2 teacher development books published by Cambridge. And these 2 teacher books, they worth more than 200 reais. And some Cambridge items that we have included, some a Cambridge mug, pen, notebook, pencil, and a very chic Cambridge water bottle. So all with the beautiful Cambridge logo on it. Okay, I think we can do it. The first one. Who's gonna help me with the winner? With the first winner? Okay. Just bear with us, just a few more seconds. So we are seeing the screen, and we are very anxious to know the first winner. Okay, I think Leonardo, my colleague from Cambridge, is spinning the wheel. Let's see. The first winner is Yeah, Roberta Monteiro Câmara. Roberta Monteiro Câmara. We'll get in touch with you and give you details on how you can get your your prize. Okay, this very nice and chic package of Cambridge goodies, including 2 methodology books. Can we spin the wheel again? And here we go. E. That's not. Who is E? That's. Pode isso, Arnaldo? Can we do it again? Yes. Let's spin the wheel again. Okay. Emma Paula Agueiras Molin Coelho. Emma, congratulations. And that's it, really. I'm just going to, I need to just share my last screen. Yeah. Okay. Because there is a link there for the certificate. So guys, thank you very much. This is the end of our event, unfortunately. In the name of Cambridge University Prize and Assessment, I would like to thank our speakers in the first place, Ben Goldstein, Alberto Costa, and César Bizetto, for their time and incredibly useful talks. I believe we were able to honor the theme of the Cambridge Teachers' Day this year, which was to bring you interesting and relevant information for your career success in terms of continuous teacher development. We'd like to thank you all for your time, for attending our event. Thanks a lot. We hope you liked it and see you next year. Thanks a lot and happy Teachers' Day.